Malcolm X is one of the most influential figures in American history. His assassination in 1965 was equally significant. The quick arrest and conviction of two men was a large part of the story told by authorities. But what we know now is that that story was a lie, thanks in large part to the work done by the Innocence Project. Almost 2 weeks ago, Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam were finally exonerated after a judge in New York threw out their convictions. Both spent more than 20 years in prison. Islam, who was released in 1987, was 74 when he died in 2009. Aziz, who's now 83 years old, was released from prison in 1985. The reinvestigation into these cases was a joint effort with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, the Innocence Project, and a New York-based law firm. Here with me are two of the attorneys who were directly involved. Vanessa Potkin, Director of Special Litigation with the Innocence Project, and Deborah Francois, an attorney with the David Shanies law firm. Thanks to you both for coming on the show.
Great to be here.
Deborah, to you first. Muhammad Aziz, he was in his 20s, in the prime of his life when he was sentenced to prison. Now, 55 years later, his conviction has been vacated, and he was actually in court when a judge made it official. Let's listen to his response to that moment.
Those events were and are the result of a process that was corrupt to its core, one that was all too familiar to Black people in 2021.
Deborah, Muhammad has said that no court, prosecutors, or a piece of paper can tell him what he's known from the start. Nevertheless, his name has officially been cleared. How are he and his family doing now?
I think that their exoneration of both Muhammad and Khalil has been extremely bittersweet. Both Muhammad, his family, and I'll add Khalil's family to that as well. Muhammad and Khalil should have never been arrested, charged, or convicted, and there is abundant evidence of their innocence from day one. And their wrongful convictions, which is a product of extreme official misconduct, and Muhammad and Khalil knew, their families knew, the communities knew that they were innocent. So as Muhammad eloquently said himself, he doesn't need a piece of paper to tell him what he and so many other people have known for all these years. That being said, it is extremely validating for both men and their families to have this official recognition of their innocence, to have the district attorney's office admit their fault in this, and for more of the world to know just how much the FBI and NYPD were complicit in the wrongful conviction and imprisonment of these two men. So I think this moment is extremely bittersweet for them. I think there's a lot of sadness, the fact that so much of their lives were wasted, so much of their lives were robbed from them. But it is really validating for them to finally have a court tell them and tell the world what they have long known.
Vanessa, not only have both these men endured immeasurable damage, but so is the family of Malcolm X, who never were given a fair and robust investigation into their loved one's killing, and really holding those truly responsible. What do you say about that in terms of what this family is owed? Because, I mean, they're never going to get closure. I mean, given how old this case is, they may never get answers.
Yeah, this was an enormous travesty of justice, not only for, Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam and their families, but as you mentioned, the Shabazz family and indeed the world with what was, taken and robbed from, us and who this, world could have been had Malcolm X not been assassinated. So the impact of what happened here is hard to capture and unknown. But, four of Malcolm's daughters were in the ballroom that day and, along with Betty Shabazz, witnessed, their father be gunned down and assassinated. And, his six daughters grew up without a father and enduring that pain. And, this was not just an innocent mistake. The wrongful conviction and even the assassination itself, police knew that his life was in danger. There was no police presence at the ballroom that day. There were informants working for the NYPD and the FBI in the ballroom at the time of the assassination, and evidence was hidden from the defense in terms of, evidence that would have supported the innocence of Mr. Aziz and Mr. Islam, and also pointed to the people who were the actual triggermen. So all of the people who carried out the execution in terms of the shooting and the staging inside the ballroom are now deceased. But there's a tendency in wrongful conviction cases just to point to the people who carried out the actual crime. But there's much more responsibility here, and more so in this case. How complicit was the NYPD and the FBI? Were they actively involved in this assassination? Why has this evidence been hidden for 55 years? Certainly the Shabazz family is owed answers, as are we, and we have to really get to the bottom of this. The reinvestigation that resulted in the recent exonerations really just looked into the question of, were these wrongful convictions? But now we need to know, why did this happen? How did it happen? And why did this, why was the truth suppressed for over 5 decades?
Deborah, let's talk about Khalil Islam, who went to his grave with this wrongful conviction still in the books. His son spoke out after the exoneration, describing how he was cheated out of having a relationship with his father as he was growing up. Talk to us about the harm inflicted on these families.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's an understatement to say that the families have suffered tremendously and that they have been victims in this process as well, just as much as Muhammad and Khalil. Both Muhammad and Khalil had 9 children altogether at the time of their convictions. Their youngest children were each a year old. Shahid his mother was pregnant with him at the time of the conviction. So he was born into a world that labeled his father as the assassin of Malcolm X, one of the world's greatest human rights and civil rights activists. He didn't get to have the privilege of having his own memories of his father. His memories were the ones that were, planted by this criminal justice system that failed his father. So they not only had to grow up in the absence of their fathers, but they had to grow up in the absence of their fathers while also looking over their shoulders, worried that they would be attacked, worried that they would be bullied because their fathers had this stigma attached to them. So it's been incredibly painful and sad for the entire families. And I think that's also another reason why, for Khalil's family, especially, why there's so much immense sadness, that Khalil never got to see the day when his name was cleared. That was robbed from him. And that is something that his family will never get to have.
We're continuing the conversation about the exonerations of 2 men who were wrongfully convicted of the killing of Malcolm X in 1965. Still with me, attorneys Vanessa Potkin and Deborah Francois. Deborah, prosecutors were able to convict Muhammad and Khalil because the FBI and the NYPD concealed evidence that would have acquitted both men if presented in trial. You said that the convictions were, quote, a product of extreme and gross official misconduct, end quote. The word misconduct can mean so much. Can we just say what they actually did? The government framed these men, right? They hid evidence pointing to their innocence in order to get convictions for a crime they knew they weren't guilty of. Are those individuals alive? Any of them who were involved? If so, what, if anything, can be done to those officers, those prosecutors, those agents, and whoever else was involved?
Well, as a general matter, I think just taking a step back from just this case, one thing we need to do is make sure that this type of injustice doesn't happen again. And there are a number of ways to do that. As you pointed, we are trying to look into who were the specific individuals involved, because right now when we're assessing these FBI and NYPD records, we're looking kind of at the institution itself and how is this official misconduct. When it comes down to identifying the specific people, I mean, the purpose of this reinvestigation was really to focus on Muhammad and Khalil's wrongful convictions and their innocence. So in doing so, we were looking at these documents, we were looking at the records, but it wasn't necessarily to find who was a specific individual involved and so forth. With specific names, though, one thing we do know is, for example, there was an NYPD undercover officer, Gene Roberts, who was present at the time of the murder and who had crucial information, including the fact that he saw the murder happen and he saw the shooters in the front row. So, that's a name that we've come across. But coming through all of these records, I mean, we're kind of looking at just the institution as a whole and how they failed both Muhammad and Khalil.
And those undercover officers, I believe, were never called at trial by prosecutors, correct?
Exactly, because the fact that they were undercover officers, that fact was hidden from the defense and the prosecution. So they didn't even have an opportunity to talk about why were there undercover cops there. They're undercover cops, so they're clearly on high guard and observing everything that happened. And what were they doing? What did they witness? And why didn't they share the information that they saw?
Yeah, Yodit, I think that does raise the issue is, did the government just not release these names because they wanted to protect their informants and it was more important to them to infiltrate Black organizations and try to, undercut their efforts at the time, and that was the priority? Or was it because there was a more active role in the assassination itself, which is still something that remains to be answered? And in many of the wrongful conviction cases that have occurred throughout the country, there's been since 1989 2,800 a bit over 2,800 wrongful conviction cases documented. Over half of those cases have official misconduct present, meaning that police or prosecutors committed some type of misconduct, lied, withheld evidence, manufactured evidence, pressured witnesses, that led to the wrongful convictions, and almost never are police or prosecutors held accountable. And so that's something that really needs to be fixed in the criminal legal system. There has to be consequences for police officers and prosecutors who, help bring about wrongful convictions or, commit other misconduct. And right now that very rarely ever happens.
I mean, we talk about wrongful convictions, wrongful cases, every week, and it's the same story where the prosecution, the police involved are hiding evidence, and it's just a recurring thing. And I'm seeing that prosecutors aren't being held accountable either, and some are even still practicing to this day. Tell me this: what linked these two individuals to Malcolm X's killing, when even at trial they had alibis? They had people testify on their behalf saying that they actually weren't there when Malcolm X was killed, and even had one of the other individuals who was arrested and convicted admit to the crime and basically say, hey, these two weren't actually there. He didn't have to actually say that, and he did anyway. So what linked them to the killing in the first place?
Honestly, nothing. The answer is nothing. As you noted, Talmadge Hayer, the admitted assassin, hurt himself by retaking the stand and admitting his own guilt after previously testifying that he was innocent, and then testifying that Muhammad and Khalil were innocent and that he committed the assassin with 4 other men. I mean, what other evidence do you need? There was no physical evidence tying either Muhammad or Khalil to the crime scene. There was nothing tying them to the murder. There was nothing tying them to Talmadge Hayer. So there was really just nothing there to tie them to this crime. And yet, I think you had here a victim who was Black. You had the suspects who were Black. So it was easy for the government to just dismiss this as Black on Black violence and strive for finality rather than accuracy, and rush to just get whatever convictions they could. Even if they realized, even if the FBI and NYPD knew that they had evidence of innocence all along. So the answer is really nothing. There was nothing that should have led them to be convicted.
Wow. Vanessa, I've got less than a minute left. You say that there's still more questions left unanswered. Where do we go now with the investigation? We've exonerated these two officially now, but what else is left at this point to uncover?
Well, I think that we need to really understand what role the government played in the assassination and in the prosecution of 2 innocent men and their continued incarceration. And that really is something that, historically would be taken up by maybe a congressional committee. We need some body that has oversight, that has power to get to all of the unredacted records in this case, and really get to the bottom of what happened. It is important, with the exoneration, we've done a first step in correcting the historical record, but it's important that we really understand what the government's role was and what really happened here. We know what didn't happen and who wasn't involved, but we need to get to the truth.
Vanessa Potkin and Deborah Francois, thank you both for your time tonight. Really appreciate it.